Thank you very much. My name is Juliette New, and I am the co-founder of Mangata Networks, a telecommunications startup where I lead the global experience function. I'll be your host today. Before we begin, I want to thank very, very much the organizer of the conference who have worked night and day to make this happen. I also want to thank the audience for allowing us to share our thoughts. Let us begin. In 1967, over 100 nations signed the Outer Space Treaty. I cite Article 1. The exploration and use of outer space, including the moon and other celestial bodies, shall be carried out for the benefit and in the interest of all countries, irrespective of their degree of economic or scientific development, and shall be the province of all mankind. I'd like to open the floor with a few questions related to the statement in that first article. This first question goes to Ms. Yoon. What is your view on the feasibility of making space resources accessible to all, especially when the space economy is largely driven by private enterprise, rooted in the usual economically developed countries? Does it matter or does it not?
Thank you for the question. I think this is a very important and timely topic of discussion, especially now that we are kind of at the cusp of realizing a lot of things in space that really largely existed in the collective imagination of people back in 1967 when this treaty was adopted. Throughout our history in space, I think the vast majority of our history really was driven by government actors, and especially the US government. And I think we largely hear about investments from the private sector in the news and popular media today, but I think we have to remember that this is actually a relatively new development, and it has traditionally been governments that have really driven the space economy. And so I just want to point out, I think it's a point of interest that 2 out of the 3 famous billionaires that were actually mentioned in the program competed with each other quite fiercely, and among other competitors as well, for a US government contract to provide launch services very recently. And this contract is worth about $9 billion. And so to say that competition for this particular contract was very fierce is actually kind of a little bit of an understatement. And I mentioned this to say, or bring home the point, that a large part of the development and survival of a lot of private companies that are aspiring to be in space is actually winning government contracts. That said, I do think that there's much potential for commercial customers to outgrow government customers in terms of demand and pocket size in the future. But for the time being, I think it's largely the governments that have the deep pockets that are driving the space economy. But to that end, I don't think that it's necessarily detrimental for a space-based or the economy to be largely influenced by either the government or the commercial sector. Because I think in the long run, they will turn more towards sharing resources and more accessibility for all people. Taking GPS, for example, it's a space-based capability that the US government provides to the rest of the world. And that's because collectively, I think that particular technology has made our lives much better. So if you kind of think about all the GPS-based or GPS-enabled technologies that affect our everyday lives, I think navigation is a pretty obvious one. But if you think about withdrawing cash from an ATM or pumping gas to fill your car, or even modern-day agriculture, they all rely on this particular technology that is provided by the US government. And so I think that's a very long-winded answer, but I think in general, I think we will move more towards sharing resources and opening up accessibility.
Thank you very much, Ms. Yoon. Throughout our human history, groups of people have colonized land, and in doing so, they claimed it as their own. The main mechanisms for legitimacy of doing so there's two main things. One is to bury your people in that land. So my great-grandfather and grandmother were buried in here, it's mine. The next mechanism is to shape the landscape and exploit resources. So you farm the land. I've been farming this land for a long time. It is mine. This next question is for Dr. Zobrin. Do you think that once current and upcoming enterprises begin exploiting outer space resources, those resources may be monopolized and thus no longer accessible to others? What is your stance on that?
Well, I don't think that anyone can exploit outer space resources because outer space resources need to be created. There's no such thing as a natural resource. There's only natural raw materials. It's human ingenuity and effort that turns raw materials into resources. And, you know, farmland, okay, you talk about land as being a natural resource. Well, land was not a resource until people invented agriculture. And farmland did not exist until farmers created it. There is no piece of fertile land on the earth that is not aggressively claimed by a variety of weeds and other plants that would rather live there than your corn. And so farmers create their land and maintain their land, and they produce product which benefits us. Okay, that is, you know, I like to eat fish. I had fish as part of my breakfast at this wonderful buffet at this hotel this morning. Well, who caught that fish? I don't know. I didn't. Okay, it was caught by fishermen, and I don't know whether they were Korean or Vietnamese or Chinese. Could have been American, maybe Russian. Who knows? Who cares? But whoever did it did me a favor. They caught some fish that was put on that buffet, so I could have some. So you talk about outer space resources, that there's tremendous potential resources in outer space, but they're going to be turned into resources by effort, ingenuity, courage, people willing to take risk to turn those rocks and other vacant stuff into resources. And so just like, you know, people who live in landlocked countries are not being robbed by those who go and sail the ocean and catch fish for them to eat. They are benefited by those who sail the ocean to catch fish for them to eat. And those nations that choose to become spacefaring, and I mean, let's look at this, okay? Okay, Elon Musk is probably making a profit with SpaceX, but believe me, he could have made a lot more money on a lot safer kinds of businesses that would have been easier to get into, okay? And, you know, it takes a lot of risk to create the capability to go out into space, and it'll take even more risk to go to the moon or Mars or places like this and develop the materials there into resources that benefit all of humankind. So, you know, while some people, some nations that are not participating in the development of space may complain that other peoples are claiming land there. Well, first of all, in order to claim useful land there, it has to be created, and it's going to take an awful lot of effort, money, risk, courage, okay? Lives will be lost. There's going to be a price to be paid, but to create massive, unlimited resources for all of humankind. So I do not think that this entrepreneurial space race that is going on right now is in any way a threat to the people who are not participating in it. They are benefiting from it, just like all of us are benefiting from the people who invented light bulbs and made profits by doing so. As a result of their effort, we've got light bulbs. And so the people who develop the technologies that allow for the development of space will benefit all of humankind, even though, yeah, they'll make some money doing it, okay? But that's just fine. They will add to the total wealth and the total resources available to all of humanity.
Thank you, Dr. Zabrin. How does leveraging space technology and access to space may benefit innovation overall? This question is for Mr. Petrillo.
Thank you so much. And again, I really think it's an important question because we're already discussing here all together about this. The main question is, in order to benefit innovation for the global community, I really think it's important to provide a bit more context in order to understand what's the real driver, from my point of view, to benefit innovation. Because we are all aware here, space at the moment is already fueling the global space economy. And we have lots of facts at the moment that can certify this. For example, I just came back, honestly, from the United States, from different conferences, and I've seen how there has been an important growth in terms of space startups, where at the moment, more than 50% of the growth is coming from the last decade of space startups coming from, as well, young people that want to innovate the future of space. And as well as we can learn this from the current pandemic in which we all live, we have seen how space technologies supported the economic sustainability and continuity for the future of space, as well as for the future of the global economy. And in addition, we can know that other fields like telecom, finance, internet are fields that are investing on space technologies. At the moment, we know that there are more than $10 trillion that these fields are investing for space technology. So there is already innovation at the moment within space technology. So the main question from my point of view is like, how can we provide more innovation on top of what we are doing? And on top of what we are doing, I think it's really important to provide, first of all, awareness about the challenges that we are currently facing. Because with these challenges, then we can provide more innovation, but especially inspiration. And this is what I really think, because the current challenges that we have right now, and we are all aware, we have really important challenges that we need to face now, like, as we know, climate change. With climate change, we know how satellites are extremely important. We know that, for example, 160 satellites at the moment are used only for climate change definition. And usually 50% of the climate change variables are coming only from space. So this is one of the challenges that we need to think about it. The second challenge is as well digital connectivity. We know that half of the population can connect to the rest of the population thanks to the satellites. And we know that there are already some companies working on that. And what is really important as well is to think about space sustainability. So we are aware that all of this cannot happen without having our space sustainable in terms of debris, in terms of making sure that we go to the outer space in a sustainable way. And so, coming back to my point, is like, how can we leverage innovation? We can leverage innovation thinking about the current challenges that we have with awareness, and from there, we can then provide inspiration through different startups, but especially from the young people, I would say, because we are, I would say, the young people, and I see here lots of young people, and I'm really happy about that. We are the ones that we will have to face these challenges in the next 20, 30 years. And we will be the ones that we will have to face these challenges, and we have to do it right now and go to the decision makers and say, okay, these are the challenges that we're facing. We want to provide inspiration. We want to make sure that these are the ideas that we have in mind in order to then leverage innovation for the space technologies. And I want to give an example, a couple of examples, in order to then finish my answer. The first example is, for example, what we are doing here at our organization. We have a collaboration with the United Office of Outer Space Affairs, the UNOSA, and we launch a competition on the climate change. And it's an essay competition in which we ask to the young people worldwide, what is the current examples that you are having right now in your country, in your local community for climate change? And we received more than 300 essays from more than 80 countries. And we have seen there the reaction of the young people on the topic of climate change. Another point that I wanted to provide here in terms of inspiration is another example, for example, from Blue Origin, Club for the Future, no-profit organization, whose main objective is a mission to send 1 million postcards to space. And how do they do it? They just ask the young people, also below 18, to write something on a postcard, and they will send it to space. And they ask to the young people, what's your vision for the future? And they will write it down, they will bring it to space, and then they will bring it back in order, again, to provide that inspiration that, again, will leverage innovation within the different space technologies that we have.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Petrillo. How far are we from a thriving space-based economy, and what might it change on Earth, Mr. Kim?
Okay, first of all, I would like to say it's very hard to predict future in the viewpoint of number. As an example, if God gives me a chance to be back to 15 years ago, I would buy Bitcoin. So like that, it's very hard to predict the number. Another example is when I was working in IT field, cell phone related IT venture in France, then always we were receiving the very expensive, the economic prediction report. But usually in about only 2 or 3 years, it is proven that the prediction was wrong. Sometimes it's much bigger, sometimes it's much less. So in that viewpoint, first of all, let me refer to one value from the very well-known market researcher, Morgan Stanley. So they analyzed up to these days, the annual space market size globally is already more than $400 billion. And by 2040, so it will be reaching at least $1 trillion. And according to another American bank prediction, it may reach more than $2.5 trillion. So some trend is quite clear. The space market will be doubled or tripled in near future. So again, I would like to say the actual number prediction is very hard, but I can say in technical viewpoint, what will be the trend in technology viewpoint. So first of all, regarding such big size of space market in coming years, so at least a IT, information related or communication related market share will be much more than 50% of the entire space market size. And the next one is, as almost everybody knows, the space tour or space travel market actually can be said it's already begun by several well-known entrepreneurs worldwide. So such space market will be getting bigger, even though the percentage of that space travel will be small in entire space market size. But that trend is definite. They are not targeting only for space travel, but also as an entrepreneur, it's well known that they are targeting those space travel related technologies are base stones for the further space exploration. That's one trend. And another biggest market, usually it's very hard to predict, especially very hard. It's a space resources development. Previously, several other distinguished speakers talked about the space resources viewpoint, but regarding other than space volume itself, I would like to talk about the in-space manufacturing, utilizing the microgravity or the much lower gravity than Earth. So from those environmental conditions, very new kind of material can be produced from space. And usually, up to now, it's very hard to predict the size of the market. And in addition to that, once we set up kind of even though this is a bit more further future, once we set up a lunar-based manufacturing facility, then we can utilize lots of the lunar-based rare earth materials. Even though in Earth, we are developing it and we are mining it a lot from Earth, but once we install such kind of the good facility in Moon, then it will protect the Earth environment also, because the mining rare earths requires a lot of sacrifice from the related land areas, because the rare earth materials are dispersed in wide range. So if we can mine the Earth, the moon, then we can also protect the Earth also in the viewpoint. Then lastly, regarding your second question, the impact from the space economy to Earth. So I already talked about we can protect Earth's environment. And also in relation to that, I would like to add my personal opinion or the personal dream also. As I told that the information-related market will be much bigger in near future, then they are dreaming of giving information accessibility to separated areas and, as an example, underdeveloped countries. And for those years, I think more, how can I say, the democratized accessibility for entire humankind may be realized. That's my opinion for your question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kim. Actually, it's a perfect stepping stone to the last piece of the questions I wanted to ask. And thank you to everyone for sharing your thoughts thus far. Hopefully, after these last two ones, we get to have a more free exchange. I'm sure you have plenty to add, and I'm curious to hear everyone's opinion, actually. This is on environmental considerations. So there is the argument that space-based economic activities may help solve some of Earth's most pressing environmental problems. This is not me saying this is Morgan Stanley, who's actually posed the question. And the question is, do humans need to leave the Earth to save it? Now, this question I was hoping to pose to Dr. Zubrin, but I'm very curious to hear what everybody thinks about it. So maybe, Dr. Zubrin, if you don't mind starting.
Well, sure. Okay. Well, let's be clear about something. Okay. The Earth is not being threatened. Okay. Humanity is what is being threatened. Okay. I mean, the Earth was hit by an asteroid 65 million years ago, and the dinosaurs were wiped out, but 10,000 years later, the planet was completely repopulated by all sorts of other animals and plants, and life went on, okay? So Earth is going to go on no matter what we do, but the threat is to humanity. And I think global warming is a real problem. The principal threat to humanity today is war, not global warming, okay, or any other thing, okay? We're not being threatened by there being too many people. We're threatened by people who think there are too many people, okay? That's where the threat is. The threat to humanity today is the same threat that it had in the 20th century, okay, where you might say wars were fought over resources, but the resources of the world were not in any way under stress in the 20th century. Germany never needed living space. Germany today has smaller land than the Third Reich, and a larger population, and a vastly higher standard of living. Okay? It was not true that there were resources shortage. There were people who believed there were resource shortages. There was people who believed that there's only so much to go around, and therefore we have to take it from them, okay? In other words, the main threat to humanity, the principal disasters to humanity that threaten us today are being threatened by the same thing that threatened us and did a great deal of damage to us in the 20th century, which is bad ideas, and in essence, one bad idea, which is there's only so much to go around, and so we have to kill each other to get it. And it is by destroying that idea that space will save us, okay? By making it clear that it is not true that there's only so much to go around. Okay, because the Earth is surrounded by an infinite sky. And if we use our creativity and work together, we can throw it wide open. And why fight over provinces when we can open up planets if we work together? That's how space will save us.
And I'm going to ask a last question. This is my own curiosity, actually. So on his way back from a short space trip, Jeff Bezos mentioned that we should be thinking about moving all the heavy polluting industries into space, and that there's a way there to protect the environment. I don't know who to direct the question to. It could go to you, Mr. Kim, or to you, Miss, anyone. Should I volunteer you and then maybe go one by one?
Then let me go first. Okay, about such idea, that's great idea, bring so-called pollution-generating heavy industries to bring those to space, because the space is really huge space, as the name stands for. But that's in trend. I absolutely agree to that idea. But at this moment, I'd like to raise one question or one debating point alongside aerospace engineers. That's the subject of the space debris. Once you install such kind of the heavy industries, including my idea about the in-space manufacturing, and in building of such infrastructure in space, we need a lot of launches from ground to bring some infrastructures to the space, and mainly in about the low Earth or the mid-Earth orbit around there. Then because of that, we will generate lots of debris or the remnant from the rocket launch. And also, as many people know, the satellites or the space structures are not eternal structure. Someday, it may need to go down to just destruct it or to dispose it. Then it may cause another environmental side effect to atmosphere or Earth. And another serious one is several years ago, there was very famous Hollywood movie, Gravity. That is caused by space debris. And as the space constellation business and lots of these space launches are being planned these days, then we need to consider about such the humankind idea of how to make the space clean. And up to now, some startups are talking about the space debris related business, but still some major opinions are talking like this: oh, the space debris is not my backyard problem, so I don't know about that. So soon we need to talk about such kind of the entire global level cleaning of the space area. That will be another topic to protect the Earth's environment in relation with the Earth industry to go to space. That's my idea.
I'd like to mention about the resources. First of all the resources that we've ever found on Earth are still here. We all talk like we're running out of water. All the water that we've ever used is still here. And all of the materials that we've dug up out of the ground are still here. They're just not in the places where we like them to be. They're in landfills or places like that. So I don't think that we need to go off planet to find resources. Somebody said that we've already mined all of the aluminum we'll ever need because they can just recycle it. And maybe it's just a question of energy to turn all of the things that we have buried into the ground back into raw materials for new things. I believe that transporting materials off Earth into low Earth orbit is costs a huge amount of energy. So if we're going to build something using resources, the resources that we should be building them with, if you want to build something in low Earth orbit, is on the moon. Because on the moon, it's only 1/6 gravity. The amount of energy it takes to lift something off the moon is tiny, or it's much less than it takes to lift something off Earth. We can use mass drivers, like linear motors, mass drivers, instead of using fossil fuel to lift things off the moon. And everything that we have on Earth, the moon is basically made of the same material as Earth. So everything that we could possibly want in terms of raw materials, we can find them on the moon. Now, to go back to the do we need to go out in space to save the Earth? And to Mr. Zubrin's point, it's not about saving the planet, it's about saving us. And if we think about how much infrastructure we would have to move if we just left climate change to do what it does, I mean, all of the major cities in the world would have to be moved. How many trillions and trillions of dollars would it cost to move all that to higher ground? The problem is that people just don't realize how big the problem is, and they don't understand what the Earth actually is and what it looks like. And this is the main thing that I feel that this new wave of space tourism is bringing to us. People are going off planet and they're having the overview effect. They get to look back and they realize how thin the atmosphere is and how fragile it is. And this is the one thing that people just, I mean, it's like we're in a burning house. We're on the inside. We've never seen it from the outside. And in order for humankind to actually be moved to make these kinds of changes, they have to be able to see it. And so, first of all, we have to get off planet. Now, if we get off planet, what are the logical places to go? It's Mars, it's the moon. The moon is close by. I've been working on studying what it's like to live on the moon and Mars. The voyage to Mars takes 8 months to go, 6 months to wait while the Earth comes around, and 8 months to come back. The moon is only 3 days away. And if you have a problem, you can send another craft there, and it's only 3 days away. What are we going to learn by living on the moon and Mars? We're going to learn how to live sustainable. Because there's never been a colony on this planet where the people haven't learned how to live sustainably. They have to grow their own food. They have to do everything. If they waited for a resupply from their home country, the colony died. And this is what's going to happen in space as well. So we have to learn how to live in space. And by living sustainably on the moon, which is a much, much harsher environment than we have here, the technologies that we will develop will be the technologies that we need to become sustainable here. So I think it's a big step for us to go to the moon and then eventually go to Mars, not because we're going to escape, but it's so we can learn how to live sustainably on this planet.
Okay, yeah, well, first of all, to address the original question, Bezos' claim that we'll move heavy industry into orbit, that's just absurd, okay? We're not going to move our steel mills and cement plants into Earth orbit and then ship iron ore up to Earth orbit and turn it into steel and bring it back down, or materials for cement and bring that back down. That's crazy, okay? If you're going to be using materials on Earth that can be produced on Earth, that's exactly where you're going to produce them. Okay, now, what Hank said is also true, though. We're going to be making materials on the moon for use on the moon. We're going to be making materials on Mars for use on Mars. And in doing all these things, we're going to expand our technological frontier, which is the only way to solve these environmental problems, okay? Look, the use of horses and other forms of animal power greatly reduced the amount of slave labor that early societies needed, okay? But they create an enormous amount of pollution. That pollution was radically reduced by the introduction of automobiles and internal combustion engines and all that. I mean, you talk about automobile pollution, yeah, it's real, but it is incomparably cleaner than horse-drawn transport, as anyone who's ever spent much time around horses would tell you. And if you had whole cities filled with horse-borne transport, which you did, they really stank, and and they were unhealthy in the extreme. And okay, but now we have the fossil fuel world, which is cleaner than the animal-powered world, okay? But we need to go beyond it. Now, for instance, the challenge of space has already introduced one important technology that can help address the problems of fossil fuels, which is to say solar energy. Okay? Solar energy was perfected for use on satellites. That's where it came from. Okay? Because you couldn't, shipping fossil fuels to orbit to power satellites is not practical. So you have that. But it's only one. Okay, we're going to need nuclear power. Okay, I mean, we really are. I mean, if you want to know, the solution for global warming is nuclear power and electrification, and that'll solve it. Okay, but you take other issues. I mean, look, yes, we can make steel electrically instead of with coal, especially if we have plentiful electric power from nuclear power and then eventually fusion power. And by the way, the Martians are going to want fusion power because deuterium, the fuel for fusion reactors, is 6 times as common on Mars as it is for Earth. So, you know, that's a culture that's going to want to see fusion power. And I'll tell you what else they're going to want to see. Okay? Carbon structures. Here we are, we're saying carbon is a problem. 500 years from now, people reading history books will wonder why we ever thought that carbon, which was a primary resource for building the graphite structures of their civilization, was considered a problem. Okay? Carbon structures can be made stronger than steel, and they're 1/4 as heavy, and can have all sorts of other very important properties. Okay? Now, Mars's atmosphere is 95% CO2, and you can reduce that and produce carbon. And now you could also produce steel on Mars. The planet's red because of iron oxide, but there are complexities to that could be gotten around. So what I'm getting at here is we're not going to, now, we settle Mars, we're going to create industries on Mars. We settle the stars, we're going to create industries on thousands of planets orbiting other stars. And yes, then the majority of human industry will be off the Earth because the majority of humanity will be off the Earth. And there will be thousands of branches of human civilization contributing inventions to the overall progress of humanity as a whole, because inventions made anywhere sooner or later get used everywhere, even if they're made in other solar systems, if we're in communication. So human civilization is going to become a much bigger thing. It's going to become a much more inventive thing. And those inventions, these technologies, will enable us to transcend the current set of problems that we currently see around us. But it's not going to be done by moving the steel mill into Earth orbit. Okay? It's going to be done by having a civilization committed to the idea of technological progress, a civilization committed to the idea of maximizing human potential, okay, in order to maximize the inventiveness and capability of humanity as a whole. Okay? That is what is going to solve this problem, and space is going to be very much a part of that.
Okay. I know, Mr. Rogers, you want to answer, but I think Mr. Petrillo wanted to say something just before, if you don't mind.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, because I think that all the points that came out with these distinguished speakers, honestly, are extremely important. But from my point of view, the summary of all the things that we're discussing over here is really the point that Kim's brought today, that what Jeff Bezos said, like, okay, do we bring everything outside of space? Yes. It's a visionary thing. Honestly, we need also this type of vision, you know, in order to think about, okay, maybe we can make it happen. But on the other hand, the real challenge that I see here, and I agree from Kim's point of view, it's really the space accessibility, but the space debris, because it's a really big, complicated problem that we are having all right now. And there were some solutions here, but the problem, again, is, I think, awareness about what is happening in LEO and MEO at the moment. Because the point that I see here is like, how can we arrive at the point in which this problem will arrive on the tables of the decision makers, of the prime ministers, of the politicians, you know? Because we need to arrive at that point. And the issue, the problem that I see here is also what happened, like, for example, with the pandemic. We were not prepared. It arrived. Like, immediately we were not prepared, and we had to react immediately. And at the end, from my point of view, even if there were some challenges, it was an example of international collaboration in order to arrive at the vaccine after 1 year. It's the same for what mentioned before about the fact that the main threat is not the climate change, but is humanity. And what is the real example of international collaboration at the moment, from my point of view, it's space. Because the ISS, the International Space Station, this is really the example of international collaboration. And this is what I would think is the point in which we need to arrive and be prepared before the real challenge will arrive. So be prepared about the fact that we need to provide access to space, but at the moment, the challenge is there, and it's growing much more, and people are not aware about it, and maybe politicians are not aware about it, and we need to focus much more on this in order to make sure that then we can do all the other things that we discussed today. So I just want to say this. Thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting. Everybody talks about space debris, and it's right at the very beginning. We're right at the very beginning of creating this space debris. I mean, just think of what launch capability is going to look like 100 years from now. And we're going to have to make rules. And the rules should be something like, okay, we're going to drive on the right side of the street, or we're going to drive on the left side of the street, and this area is going to be for debris going this direction, and this area is going to be for debris going in this direction. And so if we all decide and control the orbits of all the things that we're sending up there from now, then the space debris won't be such a big deal, I don't think, because we will all have similar orbits. Now, as far as energy is concerned, we talk about wind and solar, and there's only so much you can do. So for me, the way I look at solar, the problem with solar is it takes space on Earth, and it will take space in space also. Just think about if you had a big solar field and it's passing across your crop, it's going to reduce anyway. What I'm trying to say is that the real source of energy on this planet is geothermal. We've only scratched the surface of geothermal. The reason we have plate tectonics and all the earthquakes and all the volcanoes and everything is because the inside of this Earth is hot. It is super hot. And if we can just drill down deep enough, and this is, by the way, a technology that the oil industry has in spades, we can go down and find that heat. All we have to do is pump some liquid down there that's cool, and it comes back hot. So I've been to places. I live in Hawaii. We have geothermal. But I've been to Iceland, and that's just small geothermal because it's on a hot spot. But just think of all the other places, if you go down even deeper, how much heat there is actually down there. So we don't have to go to space to get all the energy that we actually need. And in order for us to get the resources back from how we've divided them up and processed them, this is just a question of technology and energy. How do we get the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere? We have to break it up. Now, we got energy out of it when we burned the carbon in the first place, and it's going to cost energy for us to take it apart and produce carbon, which is a building material, as you say. But that energy can come from inside the Earth. We don't actually have to go that far. So it's a direction of technology that I think is going to happen. It's a matter of time, and we should be able to do it anywhere. We just have to go deep enough.
I know we're running out of time, but I just have to make this one final point about space debris. There are actually hundreds of thousands of pieces of space debris that are being tracked and cataloged. And it is actually a very big problem. And there are many pieces of space debris that are too small to be tracked, which is terrifying. And so I just want to press upon the audience that it actually, in my opinion, is a pretty big problem that we need to solve, or at least have some international cooperation on resolving.
Does that mean we have to make armor around our spaceships? Something like that. Make them bulletproof.
So before wrapping up, maybe someone wants to add very quickly to the conversation. I don't know if we can take any question from the audience at this point. I was going to ask that question, why do billionaires go to space?
For eternal glory.
I mean,
I'll answer that.
Roger.
So it isn't billionaires, but it's humankind. It's life as we know it. So one way of looking at what's going on on Earth is that all of life as we know it basically lives everywhere it can find on Earth. But let's call it Mother Nature, all of life. But Mother Nature has never had a baby. Mother Nature has never been able to get off planet. And what the purpose of humans why do we exist? We exist to take Mother Nature to another planetary body and to make a backup of life. And so billionaires are wanting to, maybe they have other reasons, but I think basic human reason for going to space is that Mother Nature wants us to.
We are unfortunately out of time, but thank you for your insights on all those questions. And thank you to the audience for listening.